Good morning. I'll tell you what, I'm extraordinarily excited. Here we are, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Time to answer some real estate questions. Let's see, while some additional people hop on, let me think about some things that I want to catch you all up on. Let me get the disclaimer up there. Let's see. Well, we are finishing out some of our projects. We still have about 10 under renovations at the moment, but those are all getting wrapped up, and then we will be under our 10. We don't like to have more than 10 projects going on at once. And we have also officially made a hire. So we have hired a project manager that's going to be taking over a lot of the daily things that I'm doing in the real estate side of things, which has me very excited because got to be honest, I do a lot of stuff and I don't think I do a lot of stuff well. So we're going to be able to really improve a lot of our metrics and really start focusing on acquisitions and raising money, which should go very well. All right, let's see. We got 7 people on already. Wow. Thank you, guys. I'm really happy that you're here. Super pumped. Now all that you have to do is ask some questions. Post them in the chat. I recently learned what AMA meant, Ask Me Anything. And I guess that's like a style of live streaming that this falls into. So I had no idea that that's what I'm doing, but I tried to describe what I did every Friday morning to someone and they're like, oh, it's like an AMA. So, don't know what that means, but if that's what you want to call it. So here we go. All you got to do is ask and I'll give you my honest answer. All right, let's see here. If you haven't already read a book called The Wealthy Gardener, I would highly recommend it. I will post a link to that in the chat. I think that's one of the best books written in like the past decade in like the self-improvement and how to become just a better person in life. Fantastic. And not to spoil it, but I got a little teary at the end, but don't tell anybody. Let's see. Here we go. Put a little smiley face of the comment too. All right, there we go. First chat. Hey, Omar. I appreciate the question, man. This is the first time I've seen you on this live stream, so thanks for joining us. And I invest in a market that has lower, below average housing prices. So the amount of money that you need to buy one of these homes are definitely less than usual. So I'd say our average purchase price is around $50,000, and the average rent is around $800 to $900, and I think that's climbing. It might even be closer to $1,000 now, quite honestly. A lot. I think when I first started, which was only like 2 years ago, generally the rule of thumb was about $550 for a 1-bedroom, $650 for a 2-bedroom, and $750 for a 3-bedroom. And now I would say most 3-bedrooms are renting out for about $950 if they've recently been renovated and whatnot. So, we can hit the 2% rule pretty easily in this market. And, I'm very familiar with Dayton, Ohio. I'm really not familiar with many other places. And I think you can find similar prices all throughout the Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, or some other states, Indiana, the old Rust Belt. I think that might be what they call it. I think I do recommend it. The pros and cons, I guess the pro would be you don't really need that much money to enter the market. And I think the con would be if you're not careful, you could end up in some high crime places and your investment might not be too protected. I think the other con is you really have to put in work to find lenders that are willing to work with you. There are a lot of lenders have a minimum of like 75. Some are as high as like their minimum is as high as like 125,000. And any single asset inside of a loan, they won't want to consider something with a value lower than that. So those are oftentimes the larger banks that we've all heard of, like the Bank of America, the Wells Fargo, the Chases. Those people don't necessarily like lower valued homes, but your local credit unions, they're likely gonna not have any issue. I bought one house for 28,000, and I put $7,000 down, and I got a mortgage for 21,000. So it's possible. I would highly recommend it. But that is a potential con. Just it really limits the type of banks that you can work with. Let's see, what are the other cons? I think out-of-state investing is tough. I think a lot of people that, probably just by the way that you worded that question, you're looking to invest in an area that you don't live in. So out-of-state investing is very tough. There are some people that do it very well, but they regularly come, to where their properties are. You really have to have somebody that you trust. Otherwise, you'd probably get taken advantage of pretty quickly. Let's see here. Okay, so Ryan, Gina loves life. That would be dope if that was your actual last name. I own a duplex and I already have a tenant for about 6 months now. What's my next step in purchasing and owning a single family home? I'm stuck. You're not stuck. You're ahead of the game, silly Gina. Let's see here. I guess you're living in one of the sides at the moment. Let's see here. I don't have a lot of cash. Do you recommend business credit to invest? I don't have a lot of cash. Let's see here. Let me make sure I got all your comments. What's my next step in purchasing and owning a single family home? I think you already know. So let's hit on this. So I do not recommend, I think business credit by and large is a silly thing. I see a lot of people make YouTube videos about it. And, I think it's kind of a myth. I don't know why especially in real estate. I don't think it's a real thing. So I would not recommend trying to utilize business credit. Likely, all of the times I've ever heard business credit talked about, it's been in relation to credit cards. And if you don't have a lot of cash, I probably wouldn't recommend you buying a house with a credit card. Even if it is like 0% for 18 months or something, it just doesn't seem like a good idea. So if you already own a duplex, that means you've qualified for it. You are renting it out. So I think what I would do if I were you is I would work with the bank that you have that duplex with already. And then I would see if it's possible for you to switch that property over into an LLC. That way you can start, one LLC. You can just go ahead and start like getting tax returns done in the name of that entity, which is going to help you down the road to establish a healthy business history of that you are a real estate investor and you have the ability to run rental properties successfully. So generally, most banks want to see that you can do that for about 2 years before they start lending to you solely based on like rental income. However, if you transfer it over to an LLC and your bank is not on board, you could accidentally trigger the due on sale clause, and you would have to like either, pay off that loan in full or sell the property. So I would not do that. I wouldn't recommend doing that if they're not on board with it. But I think that's probably the best way that you could establish a true, business history. I don't even want to call it business credit because it's not that. It's just showing that you have run a business successfully because you're generating revenue that's going to be on your tax return. Other than that, I mean, I would do, since you say you don't have a lot of cash and you want a single family home, you have a duplex, you've got it rented out. So I would really focus on increasing your income elsewhere and really lowering your expenses. But I would get rid of immediately the feeling of you being stuck, because it's just not true. You're ahead of the game. You're a house hacker, and it sounds like you're doing it pretty well. So at this point, it's likely just time and you refining your expenses so that you could save as much money as you possibly can, and looking for different ways that you can provide value to increase your income. A good friend of mine, he moved up here and he's a single dude and he lives in a 4-unit now. He's house hacking, but he used to DoorDash every free moment that he got between his work and his sleep. And he set aside a lot of cash there that he could utilize to buy additional properties. So sounds like you're doing most of the right things at this point. You know, I hate to say it, but when you're on the right track and you're doing a lot of the things right, then essentially what it really comes down to is patience and constantly doing some self-reflection, figuring out what you could improve on. But for the most part, it's just a time thing. Let's see. Are there any pain points? Silly Greg. Pain points in your real estate investing processes that could be alleviated by technology? That's a great question. Yes. So we actually had a demo with a company called Builder Trend earlier this week, where, you know, I complain a lot about the open rehab projects that we've got going on. And I think if there was a way that we could communicate with our contractors, like we use Appfolio to communicate with our residents, and I would absolutely love to have a similar platform where we could communicate with our contractors. So they could upload pictures of, you know, errors that they find. If I walk through the property, I can upload photos that I want them to address. They would be able to like upload pictures of the receipts. Ideally, we'd be able to pay them through this platform. Text them through this platform so that myself, my brother, and the guy that we just hired can all see the communications from the contractors in one spot. I think that would be great. And let's see here. Another thing that we're looking for a software solution on is I guess trying to make sure that a house is move-in ready. Because one thing that we've experienced a lot of that I'm pretty embarrassed about is somebody will move into a property and then they will discover a multitude of things wrong with it. And we'll have like 5 or 6 work orders in like the first month of them living there. And it's just because I didn't appropriately walk through the house and determine that absolutely everything was squared away beforehand. Because as good as contractors are, you know, they are trying to move quickly to make the most amount of money, be most efficient with their time. And sometimes things are, you know, kind of left undone or something like that. And I would love to find some sort of solution. And I've heard, I think it's called like Z inspection or something. There's a few different softwares that I would like to check out, but definitely trying to figure out how to systematize and document well the move in and move out process so that we could truly assess the conditions or like the damages that somebody may have done while they live there. Because right now it's just kind of a memory thing as to what was like that when they moved in versus what they the condition they left it when they move out. So it would be probably really smart to photo document on the front end and the back end, and also use that same software to make sure that we address everything and that we have our own checklist of all of the steps and all of the parts of the home that we're double checking before somebody moves in, so that they don't move into a house full of problems. Good morning, Tolu. I'm looking forward to hearing about your house. Yeah, man. Is it hard to find a property management for those markets? I'm going to say yes, because in these markets, I just don't believe that property management in like a C or low B area is like a sustainable business model. Because, let's just use an $800 average rent. You pay the property manager the industry standard 10%. Then, I mean, at that point, they're making $80 a month as the retainer. So, I mean, how many hours can that property manager actually spend on your property before they're in the reds? Let's say they want to pay themselves a very modest 40 grand a year. That's $20 an hour. So you're looking at 4 hours of their like hands-on time. And that 4 hours is going to include, getting the place rent ready, talking to the contractors, talking to the tenants, showing people the property, all sorts of things. So it's just really quick. And then if they hire on additional people, then now they're going to have to pay $35-40 an hour. So now you're down to 2 hours. So it's one of those things where the quantity has to be there. And so it's a quantity game. And then once quantity is there, the quality goes way down because the bandwidth becomes the issue. So I would say yes. I think it's very difficult to find a good property management company in these lower valued areas. So I think, and this is an absolute sweeping blanket statement, but what I've noticed and what I think there might be some validity to this, but I really don't know. This is the first time I'm going to try to like articulate this out loud. So bear with me. I think generally, in the lower value areas, well, yeah, I think I'm just going to go back to like the quantity thing. It seems like it's going to be a little bit more labor intensive because the margins are lower. It's a sustainable business model from the real estate investor side, but especially if you are doing the property management yourself and you're putting in like the sweat equity or whatnot. But when you're trying to hire everything out, it just seems like it gets really problematic because the margins aren't necessarily there. Like you can only divide up $800 of rent so many ways before there's just not money left. I think, in some of these like A areas when the rent's like $2,500 a month, well, there's a decent amount of meat on the bone if the mortgage is okay. But, that seems to be like a more transient type demographic because who in the world would want to pay $2,500 a month in rent regularly? Like, if you could afford that, then you would likely buy a house. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. Leon Finch, I recently caught one of your videos about a fire rehab you did. Any updates on that project? Also, how could a newbie go about obtaining rehab financing? Those are two great questions. So the firehouse is finished and it is currently rented out. We rented it out for $1,200 a month, which I'm really excited about. So our total cost all in on that property was around 55 grand. So about $10,000 was the purchase price, and then we spent about 45 grand on the renovations of it. It appraised for 133, which I'm really excited about, and it's rented out for $1,200 a month. So that is one of the best deals that we have ever done. So I'm very excited about that. And as far as obtaining rehab financing, that's a tough one. I guess if you want to, hard money is always an option. Hard money loans generally charge points for origination up front, and then they also are generally high interest at like 10 to 15%. And they generally charge like anywhere between 2 and 4 points origination. So if it's 100,000, then you're talking about $2,000 to $4,000 just to do the loan. So those numbers are tough. If you want to buy a foreclosed home and fix it up and live there, then that would be, you might be able to use like the FHA 203K loan, which I think would probably be a good idea if you can find one that fits all those parameters and you're down to like live in the house. I think that would be the easiest. And then the other thing that you could do is you could raise money from friends and family and pay them a healthy percent and secure it with like a first position mortgage. And we do that a lot. That's how we've built the majority of our portfolios. We borrow money from friends and family at like 10 to 12% interest only payments on a monthly basis because we're the ones raising the money and we're not going through like a broker. It's private money, not hard money. So there's no origination. It's just the monthly interest payments. Now those, when we do raise money, it is secured by first position mortgages. So in the event that we default, then the friend or family member would receive the property because that's the security or the collateral. And then, we focus on buying properties right. So we'll finance 100% of a project. So if the purchase price is 40 grand and we're going to put 20 grand into it, and we're going to raise, $60,000 to $65,000. But we just make sure that, even though we're raising 100% loan to cost, we're still diligently making sure that we stay below 75% loan to value. So they're distressed and bought at a discount. And then after we get those rented out, we will approach a traditional lender with a package of a lot of them and refinance them at 75% loan to value and, give back to our investors 100% of, the money that they gave us. So we're just paying off the first position mortgage in a refinance, which is pretty cool. And then sometimes we hit home runs, like with that fire project where, it cost 55 grand probably, probably about 55 grand total. And it appraised for 133. So we're able to pull out a lot more money than we put in. And when you pull money out in that way, it's a tax-free deal. That's what I like to hear. I appreciate that, Gina. Really nice. Hey, Lindsay. This is fun. And we've only been on here for 24 minutes and we've got 19 people in here. Man, you guys are making me feel really loved this morning. Let's see here. Did I miss any questions? 19 people. That's a decent sized classroom. I've been in courses in college that had fewer than 19 people in there. So this is exciting. Any sort of real estate questions you guys have, I'll give an honest shot at answering. A lot of people get on here though and ask me about multifamily properties, commercial properties, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I got some news for you. I'm a one-trick pony. I know single family homes, and that's about it. All of my experience with multifamily and commercial properties have been absolute guesses. Oh man, this is a really good book. Read this book today. It's called The Wealthy Gardener. There's a link to it. I've pinned it, so I'm sure you can see it. John Saforic wrote this book. He said he spent about 5 to 6 years writing it, and he wrote it with his son. So it's really cool. It's a fantastic story. Let's see. Man, thank you for coming back. What do you think about buying a property in a really small town, like 20 to 30K population? I think your tenant base is going to be very small. Your potential people, I would be very curious as to, why people would be moving there. I would be very curious as to why people live there without buying a home. I don't know. I don't have from personal experience any properties in a place this small. I'd be curious as to what's it a suburb of? Like, what's the largest area? And I think my only concern would be, turns seem like they're going to take a long time because the base is smaller. But if the base is smaller, it might also mean that the rental market is a lot smaller. So there might not be that many rentals. I guess I would just be concerned about cycling through the same people over and over again. And like if somebody's dead set on living in that area, and they don't turn out to be a good person to rent to, then where would they go? I don't know. It seems like a difficult thing to scale. Sometimes when people ask me about legal structure, I don't like answering those questions. But when people ask me about legal structure, I often refer to one particular lady. She invests in a really small town, and because she invests in a very small town, anonymity is really important to her. So she has each of her properties owned in a land trust, and like each one has its own individual land trust. So it does, so you can't go onto the auditor and see that she owns 80% of the rentals in that town, and she always feels like she has a target on her back. And I don't know. I don't think I would recommend. It just seems tough. I don't know how you'd scale it. I don't really know much more, but I'm thinking about it. Yeah. I think if you're just going to buy like one or two there, I think you're likely going to be good. I think you're probably going to get lower than market rent, and I think it's going to be really hard to raise the rent over time. But it could probably work on the one or two type scale. But I would probably encourage you to go to like a larger place where you are a much smaller fish. I recently developed an allergy to debt. If I can buy a property in cash, free and clear, why would I then add a mortgage expense? Leon Finch. That's a good question. So when I first started investing in real estate, I was coming, hot and heavy off the Dave Ramsey train. I was a Dave Ramsey purist, so to speak, and I bought my first duplex in cash for $35,000, and it was rented out for about $1,000 per month. Now, I did not have that good of a property manager at that time. They really nickel and dimed me, and I would say at the end of every month, I made probably somewhere around $100 to $300, and they always found some way to take up the rest of the money. So that isn't necessarily the best example. I remember in 2017, that was the first property that I purchased, and that was the only property that I had in 2017. The tax return showed $1,800 is what I made on that property. The second property that I purchased was for $28,000. It was a single family home. I switched management companies, but that one, I did get a loan out for it. The down payment was $7,000. The loan amount was $21,000. And then the property rented out for $770 per month. The mortgage payment was $112.73 per month. And it was rented out for $770. So that's a fantastic spread. And I only had to put $7,000 down. So everybody, I think what it really comes down to, okay, so at that point, I was very self-conscious about taking out a loan because, again, I was one of these Dave Ramsey purists. I vowed against all debt forever. But then after I did that, because I really wanted to buy the property, but it was going to be, a decent amount of time before I went from like $7,000 available to invest to $28,000, and I didn't want this deal to go anywhere else. I wanted to buy it. But then after looking at the numbers and seeing the monthly return, then it was just like, man, how many times could I do this before it's too much? Right? So if I could put down $7,000, pay a mortgage of $112, and make a spread of about $400 or $500, then how many times could I do that before it just became too much? And I don't think you can do that too much. I think at that point, it really becomes a personal preference thing. So if this allergy to debt, so you call it, if this is weighing on you so heavily that you lose sleep, then sure, don't do that, But if you are okay with, making money by utilizing debt, then I think over the long term, if you're a good steward of that debt, then it creates returns that are exponentially greater than if you were to just go free and clear and cash out. And I'm sure you could build a spreadsheet pretty easily that kind of explain the differences. So the four main ways to make money in real estate is the cash flow, the appreciation, the principal pay down, and then the tax savings. Did I get those? Cash flow, principal pay down, appreciation, and tax benefits. Sure. So by buying it free and clear, you are only utilizing three of those. So there's not going to be any principal pay down. You're still going to get the cash flow. You're still going to get the appreciation, and you're still going to get the tax benefits. So I think, that principal pay down, the way that I look at it, like we probably have like $2 million at the moment. I think the last loan that we did, that was a big one, was $2 million. And the principal pay down on that is about $4,500 per month. And it's amortized over 20 years. So it's kind of like we have bookmarked, $2 million that we are paying down on a monthly basis. So I think if you were to take that away, sure, we would have more cash on hand now, but we would be locking up that capital where we could utilize it elsewhere and drastically grow our portfolio. So I guess it really comes down to a personal preference. And I was about to make one other point, but I distracted myself in my own thoughts. Okay, yep, got it. So if your whole point is to retire early from real estate or like live off the rental income, or if you want to have a certain number of properties and then become most efficient with those, sure, I might agree with you that your goal should be owning them free and clear. Because if you are looking at getting a certain amount of income and living on it, then it makes sense to do it with as few properties as possible. So buying them free and clear, or getting a number of properties that ultimately will generate that kind of revenue for you, and then slowly paying them off, that makes sense. I think that if you're looking at real estate as a retirement plan, sure, that's not what we're looking to do. So we appreciate utilizing leverage so that we could increase the amount of growth that we have. So yeah, personal preference, man. If you're anti-debt, then be anti-debt. If you're not, then use it wisely. That was fun. I appreciate that question, Leon Finch. So you recommend single or duplex for first buy? Why? How many properties do you think I need to hire someone part-time or property manager that will actually manage the property? So both of those are good questions. So let's do this one. I recommend single family homes it depends on what route you want to go. Now, one of the cool things that I like about real estate investing is there are just as many ways to make money from real estate investing as there are people investing in real estate. So you can 100% tailor a real estate investing strategy to like exactly what you're looking to accomplish in life. If you are utilizing a traditional loan, if you want to put 5% down or 3 to 5% down on your first rental property and live there, then I would highly recommend house hacking or buying a duplex 3-unit or 4-unit, living in one of the units and renting out the others. If you wanted to be a real overachiever, and you don't have a family, then I would not only recommend renting out the other units, but I'd also rent out the other rooms inside of your personal, the unit that you're living in. I think that's really cool. So I definitely think that would be the best bang for your buck on your first property. And I think that would help you build wealth really quickly. So I prefer single family homes compared to anything else because you can pass on all of the expenses with the exception of repairs, maintenance, capital expenditures, and taxes. But other than that, everything kind of falls on the tenant. The water, the trash, the electricity, the gas, all of those things, the yard maintenance. So it's a more laissez-faire type of management. Anytime you have a multi-unit here in Ohio, then you are also responsible for the water, sewer, and trash. And you're also responsible for like the snow removal and the lawn care. I don't like doing that. I'm sure if I were to get larger than like a 4-unit property, the pain of those things might go away a little bit. But right now I don't. So I stick with single families. However, as far as like house hacking or setting myself up for success on your first rental, I definitely think getting a 4-unit would be the best idea. As far as building a portfolio of properties that's pretty easy to manage, I think I would advocate for a portfolio of single family homes. There's no right or wrong, though. I would definitely like for that to be known. It really just comes down to personal preference and the problems that you are interested in dealing with. I don't necessarily know that I have a good answer for this one either, about how many properties are needed to hire someone part-time. The problem with hiring people part-time is it really takes a certain type of person, like maybe retired, disabled, on some sort of disability that just is able to work a little bit. And then you have a scaling issue. Like if you hire a part-time person, it's going to be a painful transition to as you're growing. You're constantly going to be putting more strain on them, and they're going to reach a point where they either don't want to do any more work or start letting things fall through the cracks, and then you're going to have to transition to a full-time person. As far as a property management company and having enough to where they spend an appropriate amount of time on you, I don't think that's a real thing because it's a quantity thing. We took property management in-house when we were around 60 properties. That allowed us to recapture about $6,000 per month in management fees. So we were able to increase our cash flow there. And I guess the easiest answer would be however much you think you want to hire somebody for, go ahead and see how many properties and at like an average rent that you would need to have in order to pay that person, assuming a 10% management fee. That's what I would say. I appreciate you thinking that they're golden nuggets. So thanks for giving me things to talk about. And just like that, we're already down to the bottom of the comment list. Got anything else? Having fun. My brain is a spinning. Let's see here. I've got my disclaimer up. Yeah. Let's see. Ryan Ingram. There I am. Post questions in the chat. All right. Let's see. I don't think you could necessarily go wrong with any of them. All of them have their own pros and cons. And I would say every market, the cool thing about real estate, I know I've said this several times, but like also just as many markets as there are across the country in all these different states, there are real estate investors there making money by owning rental properties in that area. So it's possible to make money in any market. It's just about finding the one that you like the most. So, some people, I would definitely recommend visiting all of these places before you make a decision and just figure out which one you like the vibe of most. Because, I have met a lot of people that for whatever reason really dislike Dayton. I know a lot of people that dislike Cleveland and a lot of people that dislike Akron. So it's possible to speak ill of a lot of these places. And the last thing you want to do is build a portfolio in a town that you hate. Josh Woodland, welcome back, man. To follow up on Leon's question, what's your end goal? What is the main difference between his plan, buying with cash, and yours, leverage? Just the growth. I mean, my goals are my goals. My end goal is, really just creating something that allows for me to care for pretty much an entire community. So, I think I think if your goal is to be self-sufficient, then you could achieve that with a free and clear portfolio. I think, like I said on the YouTube, like the intro video that I did, I think the meaning of life is to be the best version of yourself for the benefit of all those around you. And, I am really interested in having a lot of fun creating this business that has a lot of like gross income coming in, and it allows me to, pay contractors. We have 3 or 4 crews that we keep busy pretty much year round. So in a way, by me doing this, allows them to take care of their families. And now we're hiring our first full-time person, our first project manager, and that's really cool. We're going to be able to, really help him. So I did like a 3-year goals video in which I share a lot of my short-term goals. And one of the things that I have done recently is I've done my best to orient all of my goals to be focused on adding value to other people. So on that 3-year goal, one of the things that I'd like to help people do is I would like to help 10 people buy 10 different homes, 10 people buy 10 properties over the next 3 years. And then I would really like to help 1 person become a millionaire over the next 3 years. So I'm making decent progress on all of those things. And I guess kind of to further clarify what I'm saying is I really believe that 10 properties is life-changing. And I also believe that real estate is a very easy catalyst to go from nothing to a lot. So if you're going to build a real estate portfolio all in cash, then obviously you're going to have a lot of your own money. Now, if you have a high-paying W-2 job, if you have a business that spits off a lot of money, or if you had a windfall of cash from some sort of inheritance or settlement or something like that, then sure, you could very easily buy a lot of rental properties. If you don't have a high-earning W-2 job, if you're just trying to save your way into a real estate portfolio, then you're talking about a long time of like saving and slowly buying properties. And that's not necessarily something that from my personal story, was very appealing to me. And like I said, I bought my first duplex in cash. I spent $35,000 and I was making, a couple $100 per month, and outlaying $35,000 to get a couple $100 a month is a very poor return. So by utilizing leverage, you're able to increase your returns. You're able to put down less money. You're able to have less of your own cash and build a, portfolio that is essentially going to change not only your life, but, I think real estate is like the epitome of generational wealth. So while this isn't necessarily the greatest structured response, I would say utilizing leverage really expedites the process of acquiring properties. It increases the returns and it circumvents a lot of time just saving up money. What else? I'm good friends with a guy that has over 100 properties, and he probably has maybe 20% leverage on them. But he also has like a landscaping company that produces a couple million in gross revenue on an annual basis. Whereas I was in law enforcement and I was making like 44 grand a year when I started. My brother was making 70 or 80 when we started. So we did not have like the high income earning or any of that. So for us to get from A to Z, leverage greatly expedites that process. There are a few guys in the group that have high income W-2 jobs, and it makes sense for them to just buy one property per quarter by the money that they're saving, utilizing leverage, rather than doing the creative financing route that my brother and I did by borrowing 100% of the like purchase price of properties. So I guess all I'm really saying is, our approach is different because we didn't have like a large business or a high paying W-2 job. We skipped that step. Thank you, man. Do you have to report your earning if owning a property all in cash? Yes. Taxes will always get, the tax man will always get theirs. What is your process for assessing potential residual income on a new property? Potential residual income. Man, I'm in the final stages of building an app. I'm not personally building an app, but we are so close. We're just polishing it up, making it look real pretty. And I took our method of analyzing a property and turned it into an app. So you'll know exactly how I analyze a property here shortly. But I mean, in a nutshell, it's exactly the same as everybody else that analyzes properties. You put in the amount of income that you're going to get, and then you put in all of your expenses. If you want to, you can also forecast potential expenses. I don't really like these numbers because they're not real numbers, but a lot of people set aside 10% for repairs, maintenance, and 10% for capital expenditures and like 4% for vacancy. And the reason that I don't like that is because, I don't know, like it's not a real number. Those aren't like actual expenses on a monthly basis. And if they are actual expenses, then they're likely going to exceed whatever percentage that you accounted for. So I think those numbers are decent if you are putting together like a presentation to forecast earnings, and like create realistic expectations. But I think the reality is, unless you have corresponding bank accounts that you put 10% of the income for repairs and maintenance and 10% of the income into capital expenditures and 4% into a vacancy fund, I really just don't see the point of including those in your expenses. Also, I think getting it back to the leverage question, I would say if you're buying properties in all cash, then sure, you've got like a decent amount of money coming in. But at the same time, if you've got one or two properties, then you cannot possibly collect enough rent from any one of those properties to pay for all of the things that could potentially go wrong on that property. So it's kind of like the best analogy that I like to think about is, it's impossible to write insurance, like for one insurance company to write insurance just on one car. Like you couldn't possibly collect enough premium from that one person to cover all of the things that could potentially go wrong with that car, all the damages that they could cause with that car, especially when you venture over into the liability section. So similarly, it's impossible to collect from one property, from one resident, enough money to pay for the roof that's going to go bad at some point, the water heater that's going to go bad at some point. So it really comes down to like playing off the law of averages or the law of large numbers. So the more properties that you have, the more likely that your incoming cash flow is going to be able to float all of the things that go wrong. And my brother and I experienced that around like the 20 property mark. 20 properties is where we got when we no longer had to put any of our own money into the business to keep it afloat for another month. I think realistically, you will hit that around the 10 property mark, which is another reason that I really want to, the people that I really want to help 10 people buy 10 properties. I'd be very comfortable at that number, because that's when it really doesn't matter what that person as an individual makes. Like 10 properties, let's just say they're rented out at $800 each, $8,000 coming in. $8,000 is likely going to be able to pay for a roof that month, pay for any sort of water heater or plumbing issues that's experienced during that month. So, the law of averages really takes effect. And that's when the burden really gets lifted from the operator. Now, my brother and I, we went straight from 9 properties to 22 properties. We bought a package of 13. So that's why I said 20. But realistically, I think it occurs more so around 10. Hope that helps. What process should I use to vet investor-friendly agents? I don't really think you need to do that, man. We don't have like a realtor, one realtor that we use. I know this is probably, I've read a lot of things about finding investor-friendly real estate agents or whatever, but I mean, I have a lot of real estate investor or real estate agent friends. I buy properties from all of them, I really don't think you need a real estate agent though to get started. I mean, you just look on Zillow and go to these Facebook groups and find properties. I mean, real estate agents want to sell their properties and they market them everywhere. So most of the time we have just we always generally reach out to whoever the listing agent on that property is, and we'll just buy it from them. We don't necessarily have a agent walking us through the process, and I definitely don't like investor friendly. I don't even know what that means. The realtor either wants to sell that house or they don't. I think if you just walk into a realtor's office and try to find somebody that's willing to sell you like a $50,000 property, I mean, I guess that takes a particular individual, because it's going to be just as much work for that person to sell a $50,000 property as it is to sell a $200,000 property. So same amount of effort for 25% of the income, right? And then I also think there's kind of a misnomer about these investor-friendly agents of the investor being just extraordinarily unrealistic and disrespectful of the realtor's time. So I know a lot of like people that want to work through like one real estate agent, they will, like I've seen like out-of-state investors ask for an agent to go through and look at like 6 properties. And all these properties are like $50,000 properties. Now, just the way numbers work, you're likely only going to buy one of those. So you've got this one realtor running around looking at entirely too many properties for the glorious benefit of getting 3% commission on a $50,000 sale. So you, at the end of the day, if you're not careful, you could really have a lot of these realtors running around working for like less than $5 per hour. So I would just keep in mind that any realtor that you use is paid on commission, not by the hour. And you want to be respectful of their time and not send them around to hundreds of properties, because at some point you're going to wear out your welcome. And I think the whole term like investor-friendly realtor is really just a way to say, hey, I'm really hungry. I would like to sell, any property to anybody because I want to eat. So I think it's probably a good way to start a career. But I mean, at some point, like you have to start being conscientious of their time. And sure, I mean, another thing that realtors, I think, kind of seek after is that one investor that they could sell, 5 to 10 properties per year to. But even then, you can only ask for so much of their time, especially if they're $50,000 properties. So both on the realtor side and the property manager side, I would just say that as an investor, you should likely go above and beyond to make sure that you're not asking people to work a crazy amount for you for a very small amount of money. And I've seen a lot of relationships between out-of-state investors and local realtors or property managers slowly dissolve or deteriorate because of unrealistic and unfair expectations. And the realtor and property manager might not be articulate enough to say, or willing to confront someone saying, hey, I'm happy to do some of this for you, but the amount of things that you're asking me to do is unequal to the amount of pay that I'm getting from these actions. So I would say if you really want to be conscientious of that, then that's your vetting process. Is you just make sure that you like that realtor as a human, and then you help them protect their time and never let them work for, close to free for you. What a rant. I think that was kind of nice, though. I imagine a room of realtors and property managers patting me on the back for saying all that. Let's see here. When you walk through a potential single family, do you write things down? What are you noting? What questions do you ask the seller? That's a good question, Stephanie Rivas. Chris Walters, you just asked me a very, I'll answer this one. But Chris Walters, while I'm answering Stephanie's question, will you give me a little bit more context as to what in the world you're talking about? Because I don't know I understand numbers, but I don't know what kind of partnership. What kind of marketing are you doing? Are you trying to be a wholesaler? Are you trying to do ads for realtors? What are we talking about here? All right, so I should get a lot better at this. As far as walking through single family homes, I do not write things down. I have my phone and I take an extraordinary amount of pictures and create a Google photo album. And that album is labeled as the street address for that property. I generally end up with around 70 to 100 pictures of each property. And that's kind of my version of writing things down. I don't think that I ask the seller really any questions. And I don't really know. Sometimes for kicks and giggles, I'll ask them like how old the roof is, but a lot of times people don't know. Other than that, a lot of these things speak for themselves. Sometimes if it's in an area I'm not familiar with, I'll ask them about that area, but you get to a certain point, I guess, where you can kind of tell how old the water heater is. You can kind of tell what kind of shape the roof's in. You can see the deferred maintenance. If you look at the plumbing, you could tell if there's been leaks. If you look at the subfloor under the, areas that utilize the plumbing, you could see if it's got water damage, if it's dry rotting. You can kind of tell what you're going to need to spend money on. If the property's occupied, then I'll kind of take a shortcut and I'll ask the person living there, hey, does everything here work right? And generally they're very happy to tell you all the things wrong with the property. And then on the seller side, if it's occupied, I'll ask them, about like how they view that individual as a resident. Are they a good one or are they a bad one? But yeah, houses are pretty simple. Things are going to go wrong and you're going to have to fix them. So you're just trying to find all the things that are potentially going wrong. So, and some sellers, once they get the sense of that, they tell you all the things that are going wrong. And then other people, try not to. But if you take enough pictures and if you look at enough places, you'll be able to see everything. All right. What's a good partnership look like if I'm paying for 80% of the marketing? Is 70-30 a good deal? I take 30%. No idea, buddy. No idea. I'm a restaurant franchise out-of-state wholesaler. Ask me, cover 80% of monthly marketing, direct mail, etc. Total $3,000. I'll cover 80% of that cost. When he closes a deal, I'll take 30%. I don't think I would do that. It just sounds very extra. Just sounds pretty crazy. Sounds a bit silly. The potential returns, like $3,000 worth of direct mail marketing. You might get one good lead, maybe. I wouldn't do it. I am almost positive that you could make better returns by doing more of your restaurant stuff. I am thinking of buying as an out-of-state investor in the southeast section of Dayton. What's a low-end price point I can get in at? That completely depends on what property you're looking at. I mean, I don't even know what the southeast part of Dayton is. Belmont, maybe? I mean, just generically, I could say that, if you want to buy a property that's rent ready, I mean, you're probably going to spend between 50 and 100 grand. That number has gone up a lot. It used to be like 25 to 50 grand. It's gone up a lot. Also, would you stay in the Dayton area is best for cash? Would you say the Dayton area is best for cash and not appreciation? I would say any lower markets are. I would say the general rule of thumb is that you are generally either investing for cash flow or appreciation, and very seldom can you do both. I think I personally got very lucky in the fact that I started investing for cash flow at a time right before the market started increasing. So I've been able to benefit a lot from that. But I also, as a general rule of thumb, it's not like you invest in a place with crazy appreciation like California or Seattle or something like that and expect that those properties cash flow. So I would say that's a really good rule of thumb. Can you tell how old the boiler system is by the color? Does blue mean really old? And does Dayton have a lot of oil homes? No idea about boiler systems or the colors of them. And no, I do not see that many homes with radiators in them that haven't yet been converted over to forced air. I've only got one property that is using a boiler system at the moment. And that one, we're about to start renovating, where we're going to take that stuff out and put in a forced air unit. So yeah, I have very, very little. You know what? I'm not even going to give myself that much credit. I have zero knowledge of boiler systems. What an honest guy I am. Thank you, man. Thanks for thinking that I would have a good answer for your question. That's pretty bananas. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do that with that wholesaler. Have you added value to a rental, redo floors, update kitchen, bath while occupied? Nope. When the property is occupied, I simply fix the things that are wrong. If something is really wrong, like we recently got a property where the toilet, there was some water damage, the subfloor was rotting. Because the subfloor is rotting, and we're going to have to lift up the toilet, fix the subfloor. While we're doing all that, we're just going to go ahead and fully, quote unquote, remodel that bathroom. But as far as going in there and putting in new kitchens and all those things that you just said while somebody lives there, I don't think you're going to be able to realize an appropriate amount of returns unless you work out. I guess I would say, if somebody asks me to do all these things, then I would likely say, sure, but your rent is going to have to go up to, X amount that would make it reasonable for us. But I mean, if you are buying a property that needs that stuff, then likely you're going to be under market. And if you're under market, there's no reason in improving it until they move out. Just maintain what you got while they live there, because they've already agreed to live there looking the way it currently looks. Make sense? And thanks for coming back again. Sure do appreciate it. You're on a little streak. I think you've asked a question for like the past 3 or 4 weeks, so thanks. I'm going to pull up a map. I'm truly curious as to what the southeast portion of Dayton is. This is exciting. Southeast, University of Dayton, that area. Okay, so you're talking about Walnut Hills, Twin Towers, maybe even South Park. Linden Heights, Belmont, Schroyer Park. I could see why you want to invest there. East Dayton has a certain stigma about it being the nicer part of Dayton. West Dayton has a certain stigma about it being the bad part of Dayton. I think there are equally horrible parts of both sides. And I think there are equally great parts of both sides. But I definitely think that you could see a clear difference in prices. The same house that you would buy in East Dayton, you could get for about 50 to 60% of that in the West Dayton side. Depending on who you talk to, some may even argue that this might be a race thing. But I, little old Ryan Ingram, don't believe in that kind of stuff. I'm in the process of building my team and network. I found that in my area, a lot of REI groups require membership fees. In your experience, are they worth it? I mean, if you're actually talking about the RIAs, and if you're new, I think it's a good way to expose yourself to a lot of different avenues of real estate investing. I think you're likely going to be able to learn a lot and meet people that have a lot going for them. But I would keep in mind that the way that RIA operates is as a business, and generally the speakers that they bring into those events are ones that want to sell you something. So if you're going to pay for the membership, I would take the free snippets of the speakers and I would not pay for any of the courses. I do not believe that you should pay for any sort of like real estate course or manual or something like that. I'm generally adamantly against it. The courses that I've seen people put together are generally full of nonsense, and they frame their entire presentation around kind of convincing you that they have some sort of secret that you're going to be able to go out and duplicate. And largely I found that there is no secret, and what they have done might not even be duplicable. And then if it is, it's going to take an extraordinary amount of work on your end that most people that buy that course will never do. So I would say go ahead and do an extraordinary amount of work and a lot of your own research and piece together your own information that you're comfortable with for free. Real estate investing has been one of those things that it's been around for a really long time. We own a duplex that was built in like the 1800s. So it's been a cash flowing asset for longer than most businesses have ever been around. I think the only thing that has been around for a similar amount of time is the United States Postal Service. That was a good joke. Man, I really tickled myself just there. All right, let's see. Do you use Eviction Lawyer? Yes. Which service do you use to flag bad tenants? I don't know what that means. To flag bad tenants. We manage all of our properties utilizing Appfolio, and they have a bunch of leasing features, and they have like the ability to run background checks and credit reports. And our criteria We don't flag bad tenants. We just verify that people meet our criteria. And if they meet our criteria, then we'll rent from them. And if not, we'll rent to them. And if not, we won't rent to them. So I guess my answer to that is likely Appfolio. I'm just putting all the REI pieces together and you're adding value to that process. Ryan Ingram Live is my favorite Friday to-do list. Thanks. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I have tons of fun doing this. Yeah. Do you use Eviction Lawyer? Yes, I answered that. Cool. All right. Let's see. Reach the end of the comments. Got 11 people, and we're an hour and 12 minutes into this. Kind of losing a little bit of steam here. Guys got any questions? Any real estate questions? I'd like to answer those things. All right. Well, man, these things normally go on for 2 hours, but hey, I will wait a few more minutes. I don't really have anything to talk about. We're at a really good spot now in our portfolio, and an uneventful one. I mean, we only have 2 properties in our pipeline at the moment that we're about to purchase. And normally there's like 20 or 30 in there. So we really took a break because we had like 17 properties under renovation, and we really wanted to get a handle on that before we proceeded anymore. And then we also hired this guy. So after he gets fully onboarded, then we are likely going to really escalate on our purchasing. So we're currently at like 130 something doors, somewhere in the 130 range, and we'd like to end the year around 170. But if things go well, we might even shoot for 200 by the end of the year. That'd be really cool. No, I don't do any Airbnb. I think I would like to. We have purchased a few properties in areas that I think would be very conducive to Airbnb because it's near the university. And it's in areas that others would consider to be a little bit more posh, per se. But I just haven't pulled the trigger. We've got such a good system going on our rentals at the moment, and we're really dialed in. And I think we're doing things pretty effectively and working through very specific sets of problems. And I think introducing Airbnb and all of the new problems that we don't currently deal with, that would cause, is something that our systems and processes currently couldn't handle. So it would be a little bit laborious maybe, and just a different avenue that I don't think we're yet prepared for. Now, I think if I think just similar to what I said earlier about getting into rentals, I think if we ever do get into this, in order to fully capitalize on efficiencies and whatnot, I think we would probably need to start with like 5 or 10 of them. And we don't yet have 5 or 10 properties that I think would make a good Airbnb type place. Just thinking out loud. Are the biggest CapEx accounts you consider before buying the roof, update electric panel, HVAC system? If those are all good, would you purchase if the price is right? I would purchase it if the price wasn't right. So the capital expenditures piece of it, and kind of like I said earlier, is when you're walking through these, you can get a really good feel for what needs to be done on the property. And I mean, if I walked into a property that had like 100% knob and tube wiring, well, that's a real big red flag. And it would be very difficult to get insurance on that. So what I would do there is just make sure that the after repair value of the house was appropriately discounted so that I could fix that capital expenditure. I don't really need the electric panel, the roof, and the HVAC system to be decent in order to buy the house, because those are all expenses that I don't mind making, because as soon as you do it, I plan on having all of these properties for the next, 50, 60, who knows, maybe even 100 years, the way Elon Musk is going. So if that's the case, then I don't mind doing it, because eventually, throughout me owning that home, I'm going to do it. Now, if it's an immediate thing and you can tell the roof needs to be replaced, then I need to be buying that property significantly discounted. So at least to the price of the roof. So if it's going to cost 10 grand to put on a new roof, the house is worth 80 grand, then I would want to be able to buy that house for 60-ish. If that's the only thing that needed to be done. That way I've got 10 grand to do the roof, and I have 10 grand worth of equity to, make it justify buying a distressed property that I have to put an immediate 10 grand into. Is there a better strategy than Burr method to grow quick? I don't like the Burr method because I think it's very silly. I think it's a good thing the Bigger Pockets did for marketing. But the Burr method, at its core, is just real estate investing. I mean, the Burr is what? Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Am I missing something? So, what other ways can you interact with real estate? The only other thing that I can think of is that you can sell it, right? So eventually, if you buy a rental property, at some point, you're going to rehab it. At some point, you're going to rent it out. At some point, you're going to refinance it. And at some point, if you like it, you're likely going to do it again, right? So what are we really talking about here? Now, are you just talking about the time frame of which to do it in? Because if you hold, everybody that has ever purchased rental properties throughout the course of real estate investing at some point have done this method, because that's what real estate investing is. So the only thing they're really saying is do it fast. And I think the time frame that they put it on is a little bit misleading and unrealistic, because a lot of banks have seasoning requirements. So it doesn't matter how quickly you buy it, rehab it, rent it. You're going to have to own it for generally around 6 to 18 months before banks will let you refinance. So now there are some banks that are willing to do it without any seasoning, but those are going to be your local ones, and you're going to have to do, a decent amount of looking for them. They don't necessarily advertise their 0 seasoning requirements. So, I mean, I don't know. That's how I really feel about the Burr strategy. So I'm finishing up a renovation on the property that I bought with cash via my LLC. I'm wanting to cash out refinance when I'm done. Should I keep it in the LLC? How do I go about refinancing? That is a really good question. And I think a lot of people kind of get this part wrong, because when you buy it in cash via an LLC, that is how, the property is deeded. But likely, especially when you're starting, that LLC doesn't have any history and wouldn't necessarily qualify for a bank loan. So now, if you are refinancing it and you want to do the best rates and terms, then you're going to get like a Fannie Freddie loan over 30 years at a very low interest rate. Well, they're not going to do that loan for you if the property's in an LLC. So they're likely going to either request that you do a quit claim deed, get the property into your personal name, and then there may be seasoning requirements on that before they actually allow you to refinance it. If you have an LLC and you want to do it there, then you're just going to have to show like 2 years tax returns of that LLC, show that it makes money, is responsible, and all those things. And then you're likely on a commercial loan only going to get about 20, maybe 25 years amortization, and the interest rate's going to be a little bit higher. So, on the insurance side, and when people buy properties in cash via an LLC, I think this is just one of those pain points that a lot of people don't really realize is, the importance of how the property is deeded, especially when you haven't yet fully made the disconnect between this is the property that you like this is a business that is separate from you. Before you have that realization, it gets just a little bit annoying, because likely the insurance policy is in the name of the LLC, which, would have to be changed for you to get the refinance. So you're going to create a little bit more work for your insurance agent, but that's okay. Let me actually answer your question. I'm wanting to cash out refinance when I'm done. Should I keep it in the LLC? How do I go about refinancing? Oh, I think I answered that. So, yeah, that's what I would say. You could either do a commercial or conventional. If you do a conventional, then you're going to have to deed it back to yourself. If you do a commercial, you're just going to have to find a bank that's willing to give you that loan, and you should be able to do it. Some commercial lenders will qualify new LLC loans based on the financial, like your W-2 and whatnot, and others won't. So you'll just have to find a bank that's willing to work with you. And like I've said this a lot, but like just as feverishly as I look for new properties for us to purchase, my brother looks for banks that are willing to hang out with us and do some loans for us. So I think people really underestimate how time consuming finding lenders that want to work well with real estate investors is. How would the rent play into the income requirements for the refinance, presuming I get it rented? If you haven't been a landlord for more than 2 years, if you haven't had rental income for more than 2 years, then there's a chance that some banks won't accept it. And that old saying, like, he who has the gold makes the rules. So like each bank is different. If you're going to do like a Fannie Freddie loan, then there are some very clear universal guidelines, just because they're the one, Fannie Freddie, they're the ones that are making the rules. But if it's a local bank, then each bank has its own set of rules. So even if I were to answer this, there's a high chance that your bank has different rules and whatnot. All righty. Well, unless there are any other questions, I think I might go ahead and call this a day. I know it's early, but I'm kind of running out of steam for some reason. All right, I'm gonna give it a few more seconds, and then I'll tell you guys that I'll see you next week at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Sounds like getting the first property under my belt is going to be the hardest. Yeah. But you're going to do it very well. And then it'll all get a lot easier. Fred Flintstone, you silly rascal. "29 years old, currently renting. You want to purchase a property to live in and rent some of the rooms out or something. What do I need to have done before I go to the bank for a loan?" Hey, man, thank you. And thank you, too. I think it would probably be best if you actually just went to probably some of the local credit unions and just spent a day going around to a few of them and figuring out what all you need to show them for them to give you a loan. Generally, if you have a W-2, you're just gonna the only thing that they're gonna want to look at is your debt to income ratio and your credit score. So likely you just want to, and you could probably Google debt to income ratio, figure out how to calculate it, and then figure out what banks a good ratio for a bank to lend to you, and then also work on your credit score. So I think if you're anywhere over like 640, you're likely going to get a loan pretty easily. So between those two things, you're probably already lendable, bankable, as they call it. But yeah, good work, man. This is one thing that I wish I did more of. When I was 23, I accidentally house hacked. I bought a house and rented, some of the rooms out, or one of the rooms out, maybe two of the rooms at one point. I can't remember. To some coworkers, and that worked out really well. If I knew what I was doing, then I likely would have done that multiple times, because I think that's like one of the easiest ways to build an extraordinary amount of wealth for a very little bit amount of money on the front end. So good work. Alrighty. I sure do appreciate everything. Next week, Friday morning, 8 a.m. I will see you here.